The richest man I ever met wasn't the one who owned half the city. It was the little girl who was willing to give away everything she had for someone she loved. I never believed stories about miracles. Working 2 jobs while raising a 6-year-old daughter had taught me that miracles usually belong to people with money, not women like me. My name is Emily Carter, and by the time this story began, I had learned how to smile through exhaustion so my daughter would never notice how frightened I really was. Every morning started before sunrise. Coffee brewed in a cracked machine that rattled louder than the city buses outside my apartment. I packed Lily's lunch with whatever I could afford, kissed her forehead, and promised that everything would be okay. She always believed me. Children have a beautiful habit of trusting words their parents wish were true. That Tuesday felt colder than usual. The October wind swept through downtown Manhattan, carrying fallen leaves across the sidewalks while gray clouds swallowed the morning sky. I hurried Lily toward her elementary school, apologizing because we were running 5 minutes late again. She held my hand tightly, her tiny backpack bouncing against her shoulders with every step. "Mommy," she whispered, looking up at me with those bright blue eyes that somehow still sparkled despite everything, "are you tired?" I forced the biggest smile I could manage. "Just a little, sweetheart." She squeezed my hand harder. "When I grow up, you won't have to work anymore." My throat tightened. I wanted to tell her she was already enough. That simply hearing those words made every sleepless night worthwhile. But the lump in my throat refused to let the sentence escape. We stopped at the corner as traffic filled the avenue with impatient horns and the steady rumble of expensive engines. Then everything changed. A convoy of black SUVs rolled slowly toward the intersection, polished so perfectly that the cloudy sky reflected across their dark paint like glass. People instinctively stepped aside. Conversations faded. Even the crossing guard paused for a moment. Everyone in Manhattan recognized those vehicles. They belonged to Vincent Romano. Some people called him a billionaire. Others called him the most powerful businessman on the East Coast. Most simply lowered their voices whenever they spoke his name. No one wanted his attention. Lily looked at the long line of black vehicles with innocent curiosity. "Who's that?" she asked quietly. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated. The landlord's name flashed across the screen. My stomach sank. I already knew what he was going to say before I answered. His voice remained polite, but every word felt heavier than the last. Rent was overdue again. He couldn't wait much longer. I promised him I would figure something out, even though I had no idea how. When the call ended, I realized Lily had gone strangely quiet. I looked beside me. She wasn't there. Panic flooded my chest. Then I saw her. She had slipped away from my side and was walking toward the lead SUV just as the traffic light turned red. My heart nearly stopped. Before I could call her back, the enormous vehicle came to a smooth stop only a few feet away. Security agent stepped forward, uncertain whether to intervene. But Lily didn't seem afraid. She reached into the pocket of her little pink jacket, pulled out a wrinkled $5 bill she had been saving for months, and held it up with both hands toward the rear passenger window. The tinted glass slowly rolled down. Vincent Romano looked out, his tailored charcoal suit flawless, his silver watch catching the weak afternoon light, his calm gray eyes meeting the frightened little girl standing alone in the middle of Manhattan. Lily lifted the $5 bill even higher and spoke with a trembling voice so small that the entire busy street somehow became silent enough to hear every single word. "Please, this is all I have. Can you save my mommy?" I could not breathe. Every instinct screamed at me to pull Lily back, to apologize, to disappear before someone important became angry. Instead, I stood frozen on the sidewalk as Vincent Romano studied the little girl holding out her wrinkled $5 bill with both tiny hands. Around him, men in dark tailored suits exchanged uncertain glances, waiting for a single command. None came. Vincent did not look at his security team. He did not look at the traffic behind him. He looked only at Lily. His expression remained unreadable, but something in his gray eyes shifted ever so slightly. He stepped out of the SUV with calm confidence, his polished Italian leather shoes touching the wet pavement as if the noisy Manhattan street belonged entirely to him. He was taller than I had imagined, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that fit like it had been stitched onto him. Wealth surrounded him without effort. Every detail, from his watch to the subtle scent of expensive cologne, spoke of a life far removed from mine. Yet when he knelt until he was at Lily's eye level, there was no trace of impatience. "What is your name?" he asked softly. "Lily," she answered, still holding out the $5 bill. "And your mommy needs help?" Lily nodded. "She works all the time. She says everything will be okay, but she cries when she thinks I am asleep. I wanted to buy her flowers one day, but flowers can wait. Mommy cannot." Her words struck me harder than anything I had ever heard. I had spent months pretending my worries disappeared after bedtime. Somehow my little girl had seen every hidden tear anyway. Vincent accepted neither the money nor the explanation immediately. Instead, he asked, "Why me?" Lily looked at him with complete sincerity. "Because everybody moves when your cars come. That means you can help people." Silence settled over the intersection. Even the impatient drivers who had been honking moments earlier seemed strangely willing to wait. Vincent slowly reached toward the $5 bill, but instead of taking it, he gently folded Lily's fingers back around it. "Keep this safe," he said. "It belongs to you." Lily shook her head with surprising determination. "No. Heroes have to get paid." One of the men standing behind Vincent quietly cleared his throat, almost hiding a smile. Vincent remained perfectly still for several long seconds before standing again. His attention shifted toward me for the first time. I suddenly felt painfully aware of my worn coat, my scuffed shoes, and the exhaustion I could never seem to hide. "You are her mother?" he asked. I nodded, embarrassed beyond words. "I am sorry. She should not have bothered you. We will be fine." The sentence sounded hollow even to me. Vincent studied my face carefully, not with judgment, but with the patience of someone searching for the truth behind practiced answers. "People who are truly fine rarely apologize that quickly," he replied. I lowered my eyes, unable to answer. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed a simple white business card. There was no title beneath his name. Only Vincent Romano and a phone number embossed in black. He offered it to me. "If life becomes heavier than you can carry," he said quietly, "call this number." Before I could refuse or thank him, he turned back toward Lily. "Take good care of your mommy," he told her. Lily smiled brightly. "I always do." Vincent gave the smallest nod before returning to the waiting SUV. As the convoy disappeared into the Manhattan traffic, I slipped the card into my pocket, convinced I would never use it. What I did not know was that Vincent Romano had already given a different order before his vehicle reached the next intersection, and from that moment forward, someone would be quietly watching over my little family. I tucked Vincent Romano's business card into the smallest pocket of my wallet and promised myself I would forget it existed. People like him lived in a different universe from people like me. Our worlds had crossed for less than 5 minutes, and I believed they would never touch again. The next morning, life returned to its familiar rhythm. I woke before dawn, packed Lily's lunch, and caught the crowded subway into Manhattan for my shift at the neighborhood medical clinic. The waiting room was already full before the doors officially opened. Parents holding feverish children, elderly patients clutching paperwork, exhausted workers hoping to be seen before their own jobs began. I moved from room to room with practiced efficiency, smiling whenever someone looked at me, hiding my own worries behind the same calm expression I had worn for years. Around lunchtime, my supervisor called me into her office. My first thought was that my hours were about to be reduced. Instead, she handed me an envelope. "There has been an anonymous donation to our Employee Emergency Assistance Fund," she explained. "Your name was selected because of your attendance record and financial hardship." I stared at the check inside. It covered nearly 2 months of rent. "There has to be some mistake," I whispered. She smiled kindly. Sometimes good things happen to good people, Emily. I thanked her, but confusion followed me for the rest of the day. That evening, another surprise waited outside my apartment. Mr. Henderson, my landlord, stood beside the front entrance with an expression I had never seen before. Instead of asking about overdue rent, he apologized for adding pressure to my situation. A local foundation contacted me, he said. They guaranteed your lease will remain secure while you get back on your feet. I think your daughter deserves some stability. I blinked in disbelief. Which foundation? He shook his head. They asked to remain private. My heart skipped once, but I immediately dismissed the thought. It could not possibly have anything to do with Vincent. Coincidences happened every day. They had to. Over the following week, those coincidences multiplied. Lily's school announced she had received a scholarship covering every field trip and classroom expense for the rest of the year. My aging sedan, which had refused to start twice that month, was repaired by a neighborhood mechanic who insisted the invoice had already been paid. Even the grocery store cashier smiled one evening and handed me a gift card donated through a community program for single parents. Every time I asked who had arranged it, I received the same answer. Anonymous. Meanwhile, several miles away, Vincent Romano stood inside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The city stretched beneath him in shades of silver and gold as evening settled across the streets. One of his trusted advisors approached quietly, placing a slim folder on the polished desk. Emily Carter, the advisor said. 29 years old. Certified medical assistant. No criminal record. No outstanding legal issues. She works 2 jobs. Everything we found confirms what the child said. Vincent opened the folder without speaking. There were photographs of me walking Lily to school, leaving work after sunset, carrying grocery bags alone. Nothing invasive. Nothing cruel. Just pieces of an ordinary life weighed down by extraordinary burdens. He paused at one photograph showing Lily laughing while chasing pigeons through a small city park. His gaze lingered there longer than anywhere else. Finally he closed the folder. Continue helping them, he said calmly. But they must never feel watched. They deserve dignity, not charity. His advisor nodded. And the little girl? Vincent reached into the inside pocket of his jacket where a carefully folded $5 bill now rested. His fingers touched it for only a moment before he answered. Some gifts are too valuable to spend. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe life might finally be changing. The weight on my shoulders felt a little lighter each morning, even if I could not explain why. Lily noticed it before anyone else. Children always do. She hummed while getting ready for school, laughed more often during dinner, and stopped asking whether I was secretly crying after she went to bed. I told myself that hope was returning to our little apartment one quiet day at a time. Still, one question refused to leave my mind. Who was behind every unexpected blessing? The anonymous scholarship. The repaired car. The rent assistance. Every answer ended the same way. Someone wanted to help without taking credit. I had almost convinced myself to stop wondering until another impossible thing happened. One rainy Thursday afternoon, the clinic where I worked received notice that its aging pediatric wing would remain open after an anonymous donor funded an entire year of operating expenses. The announcement spread through the halls like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. Nurses hugged each other. Doctors smiled with visible relief. Parents waiting with frightened children quietly wiped tears from their eyes after learning the clinic would not close. Standing in the middle of that celebration, I felt the strange certainty that all of these miracles somehow belonged to the same invisible hand. Across the city, Vincent Romano sat alone inside his private office after another 12-hour day filled with negotiations, contracts, and decisions that affected thousands of employees. Expensive paintings decorated the walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan glowing beneath the evening lights. Everything around him reflected extraordinary success, yet his attention rested on something far less valuable in the eyes of the world. He unfolded the wrinkled $5 bill and placed it carefully on the polished walnut desk. One of his senior advisors entered quietly, carrying tomorrow's schedule. His eyes paused on the small bill before returning to Vincent. "You still keep it with you," he observed. Vincent nodded without looking up. "It reminds me of something I almost forgot." The advisor hesitated before asking, "Would you like us to establish a trust fund for the child? Purchase a home for them immediately?" Vincent slowly folded the bill again with surprising care. "No." The answer came gently but firmly. "If I solve every problem overnight, I become another powerful man deciding someone else's life. Help them stand. Do not teach them to depend on me." The advisor smiled respectfully. "That is not the answer I expected." Vincent looked toward the glowing skyline. "Neither did I." Meanwhile, Lily waited for me at the kitchen table that evening with a sheet of construction paper covered in bright crayons. She proudly held it up the moment I walked through the apartment door. At the center of the drawing stood a very tall man wearing a black suit beside a little girl holding a green balloon. Above them, written in uneven letters, were the words, "Thank you for helping my mommy." I felt my chest tighten. "Is that the man we met?" I asked softly. Lily nodded. "I pray for him every night now." I blinked in surprise. "You do?" "Yes," she answered with complete innocence. "Everybody prays for people who need help. Rich people need help too. They just need different kinds." Her words lingered in the quiet apartment long after dinner was over. Hundreds of floors above the city streets. Vincent slipped the folded $5 bill back into the inside pocket of his jacket just before leaving his office. As he walked toward the waiting elevator, his phone vibrated with a new report from his security team. It contained only one sentence. "Someone has started asking questions about Emily Carter." Vincent stopped walking. His calm expression did not change, but the warmth that had quietly returned to his eyes disappeared as he read the message a second time. The next morning began like every other morning, but something in the air felt different. I could not explain it. The coffee tasted the same. The subway sounded the same. The crowded sidewalks of Manhattan were just as hurried as always. Yet I carried an uneasy feeling that followed me from home to the clinic like a shadow I could not outrun. Around noon, my phone buzzed while I was organizing patient files. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it until a calm male voice greeted me. "Ms. Carter, this is Daniel from Romano Holdings Community Outreach. Mr. Romano would like to invite you and Lily to a children's charity event this Saturday. Transportation will be provided if you choose to attend." I nearly dropped the phone. "There must be some mistake," I answered quietly. "I do not know Mr. Romano." Daniel replied with professional courtesy. "Mr. Romano believes your daughter would enjoy the afternoon. There are no obligations. You are free to decline." After ending the call, I stared at Vincent's business card still tucked inside my wallet. For the first time since that rainy afternoon, I wondered if accepting help and owing someone were two very different things. Across the city, Vincent stood inside a conference room surrounded by executives discussing billion-dollar investments. Charts filled enormous screens. Financial projections covered polished tables. Every person waited for his opinion before speaking. Yet Vincent's attention drifted toward the city beyond the glass walls. His chief of security quietly entered the room and waited until the meeting ended. Only then did Vincent acknowledge him. "Tell me." The man handed over a slim tablet. "Someone has been making repeated inquiries about Emily Carter during the past several days. We traced the requests through several sources before finding the connection." Vincent read the report without changing expression. "Who?" "A man named Travis Nolan." Vincent looked up slowly. "Background?" "Former boyfriend. They separated over 2 years ago. No criminal convictions. Multiple civil complaints involving unpaid debts. He recently learned that Ms. Carter's financial situation has unexpectedly improved. He believes someone wealthy is supporting her. Vincent remained silent for several moments. Finally, he asked one simple question. Has he contacted her? Not yet. But our analysts believe he intends to. Vincent walked toward the window overlooking Manhattan. Thousands of people crossed streets below without ever realizing how many invisible decisions shaped their ordinary lives. Continue observing, he said calmly. No interference unless Emily or Lily feels threatened or pressured. They deserve the chance to live freely. His security chief nodded. Understood. Meanwhile, I left work later than usual because one of our pediatric patients needed extra attention before going home. By the time I reached my apartment building, the sun had already disappeared behind rows of glowing office towers. Lily came running down the hallway the moment I unlocked the door. "Mommy, somebody left flowers," she shouted excitedly. A small bouquet of white daisies rested on our kitchen table beside a plain envelope. There was no signature. Inside was a handwritten note containing only one sentence. Every mother deserves flowers once in a while. I smiled despite myself. Tears blurred my vision before I could stop them. Nobody had given me flowers since Lily was born. I placed them carefully into an old glass pitcher because I did not own a vase. Lily watched me with quiet satisfaction before wrapping her little arms around my waist. "See," she whispered. "I told you heroes listen." I hugged her tightly, unaware that across the street, inside a parked sedan, a man lowered a pair of binoculars after watching our apartment window for nearly an hour. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and quietly said, "I found them. She is not alone anymore, but I know exactly where they live." Sleep became strangely difficult that night. I kept thinking about the anonymous flowers sitting on my kitchen counter, their white petals glowing softly beneath the apartment light. Every time I convinced myself they were simply an act of kindness, another question appeared. Why us? Why now? Lily, however, accepted every unexpected blessing with the uncomplicated faith only a child could possess. She kissed my cheek before bed and whispered, "Good things are finally finding us, Mommy." I wished believing her were that simple. Saturday arrived with clear blue skies stretching across Manhattan. After debating with myself for nearly an hour, I decided to accept the invitation to the children's charity event. It felt safer to meet Vincent Romano in a public place than to spend another week wondering why he seemed to know so much about our lives. A black luxury SUV arrived exactly at 10 o'clock. The driver stepped out, greeted us politely by name, and opened the rear door with quiet professionalism. There were no bodyguards surrounding us, no intimidating display of power, only courtesy. Lily climbed inside with wide eyes, pressing her face gently against the window as the city passed by. "Mommy," she whispered, "the seats feel softer than my bed." I laughed for the first time in days. The event took place inside a beautiful botanical garden on the edge of Central Park. Hundreds of children filled the walking paths with laughter while musicians played gentle melodies beneath flowering trees. Volunteers painted faces, handed out balloons, and organized games that transformed the gardens into something that felt almost magical. It did not resemble a corporate event at all. It felt personal, thoughtful, designed by someone who genuinely wanted children to smile. We had barely entered when Vincent Romano appeared from across the courtyard. Instead of wearing one of his dark business suits, he wore a navy sport coat over a simple white shirt with no tie. He still carried the quiet confidence that made people naturally step aside, but today there was something warmer in his expression. Lily ran toward him without hesitation. "You came," she said excitedly. Vincent smiled, a genuine smile that softened the sharp lines of his face. "I believe I was invited by a very important young lady." Lily giggled before taking his hand as naturally as if they had known each other for years. Watching them together felt strangely unreal. The most influential man in the city patiently listened while my 6-year-old explained which butterflies were her favorites. Across the garden, several guests discreetly noticed the scene. Some whispered among themselves, surprised to see the famously private billionaire spending his afternoon following a child through flower gardens instead of attending board meetings. Vincent seemed completely unaware of the attention. Or perhaps he simply did not care. As Lily chased bubbles floating across the lawn, Vincent walked beside me in comfortable silence. Finally he spoke. She reminds people that kindness still exists. I looked toward my daughter laughing beneath the sunlight. She reminds me every day. Vincent nodded. Do not let this city teach her otherwise. Before I could answer, one of his security advisors approached quietly, speaking so only Vincent could hear. I noticed the subtle change in Vincent's eyes as he listened. Calm remained on his face, but his attention sharpened instantly. The advisor stepped away a moment later. Is everything all right? I asked. Vincent looked toward Lily before answering. It will be. He excused himself politely and walked toward the edge of the garden where his chief of security waited. A tablet displayed a live photograph taken only minutes earlier. It showed a man standing outside the garden entrance watching through the fence. Vincent recognized the face immediately from the report. Travis Nolan had not simply found Emily and Lily. He had followed them here. Vincent returned only a few minutes later, and if something had changed, he hid it behind the same calm composure that seemed impossible to disturb. He smiled as Lily proudly showed him a flower crown one of the volunteers had made for her, then accepted her request to wear it for exactly 10 seconds. Watching. One of the most powerful men in New York patiently balance a crown of tiny white daisies on his neatly combed dark hair made Lily laugh so hard that nearby families could not help smiling too. For a brief moment, the entire world felt wonderfully ordinary. I almost forgot the constant worry that had followed me for years. But Vincent had not forgotten. His attention quietly scanned the crowd whenever Lily looked away, noticing details most people would never see. A man standing too long near the entrance. Another pretending to read a park map while watching us through dark sunglasses. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that would frighten a child. Just enough to convince Vincent that the report had been correct. Travis Nolan had not come by accident. He was studying our routine. As the afternoon drew to a close, families slowly began leaving the gardens. Lily carried a small paper bag filled with crafts and a stuffed rabbit she had won during one of the games. She yawned as we walked toward the waiting SUV. That was when a familiar voice called my name from behind. Every muscle in my body tightened before I even turned around. Travis stood several yards away near the sidewalk, wearing an expensive jacket that looked newer than anything I had ever seen him own. He forced a polite smile that never reached his eyes. Emily, he said, raising one hand casually. It has been a long time. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. This is not the place. Lily instinctively stepped closer to me, wrapping her small fingers around my hand. Travis noticed the luxury vehicles waiting nearby and let his gaze drift toward Vincent. Looks like life has changed for you, he said with a thin smile. I just wanted to congratulate you. Before I could answer, Vincent quietly walked forward until he stood beside us. He did not raise his voice. He did not make threats. His presence alone seemed to shift the air around us. Good afternoon, Vincent said calmly. Travis studied him for a long second before extending his hand. Travis Nolan. Vincent looked at the offered hand but did not take it. Vincent Romano. Silence settled between them. People continued walking through the gardens. Completely unaware of the invisible tension passing between two men who could not have been more different. Travis cleared his throat and forced another smile. Emily and I have known each other for years. I only wanted to catch up. Vincent nodded politely. Then I trust you understand when someone wishes to leave a conversation. Travis glanced toward me. I answered before he could speak again. I do wish to leave. He hesitated, then stepped back with an awkward shrug. Of course. Maybe another time. Without another word, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. I released a breath I had not realized I was holding. Thank you, I whispered. Vincent watched the direction Travis had gone for another moment before replying quietly, "You thanked me once before for something I had not yet done. This time you do not owe me thanks." During the drive home, Lily fell asleep with the stuffed rabbit resting against her shoulder. I watched the city lights slide across the window while questions filled my mind. As the SUV stopped outside our apartment building, Vincent handed me a small sealed envelope. "Please read this after Lily is asleep," he said. I looked at the envelope, then back at him. "What is it?" His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "The truth about the miracles you have been trying to understand." I waited until Lily had fallen asleep before opening the envelope. The apartment was silent except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic drifting through the slightly open kitchen window. I unfolded the single sheet of cream-colored paper with trembling hands. The message was short, written in neat handwriting that reflected the same quiet confidence Vincent carried everywhere he went. "Emily, kindness should never become a burden. Everything you received was given freely. You owe me nothing. Your daughter believed that one person could change another person's life. She was right. Take care of her. She has already changed mine." There was no signature. None was necessary. I read the note 3 more times before carefully folding it again. Tears rolled silently down my cheeks, not because of the financial help or the flowers or the repaired car, but because someone had seen our struggles without making us feel small. The next morning I called the number on the business card Vincent had given me weeks earlier. Daniel answered immediately and politely arranged a meeting later that afternoon. His instructions surprised me. I was not being asked to visit a skyscraper or a corporate office. Instead, he directed me to a quiet neighborhood several miles outside downtown Manhattan. The address belonged to a newly renovated brick house surrounded by maple trees and a small white fence. Children rode bicycles along the sidewalk while neighbors waved to one another from tidy front porches. It felt peaceful in a way my apartment building never had. Vincent was already waiting outside when Lily and I arrived. He greeted Lily first, accepting the handmade friendship bracelet she had woven that morning with complete seriousness before placing it carefully around his wrist beside a watch worth more than my yearly salary. Somehow the colorful little bracelet looked as if it belonged there. "Why are we here?" I asked softly. Vincent looked toward the house before answering. "Because every child deserves to know what home feels like." He handed me a small set of keys tied with a blue ribbon. I stared at them in confusion. "I cannot accept this." Vincent shook his head gently. "You are not accepting charity." He motioned toward the front door. "Come inside." The house was fully furnished but simple. Warm wooden floors. Sunlight pouring through wide windows. A cozy kitchen with enough space for Lily to help bake cookies one day. Upstairs, a small bedroom painted pale yellow overlooked a quiet park where children played beneath enormous oak trees. Lily ran from room to room laughing with excitement before stopping beside one window. "Mommy," she whispered, "I can see the swings." I turned back toward Vincent, still holding the keys. "Why would you do something this extraordinary for people you barely know?" For the first time since we met, Vincent reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and carefully removed the wrinkled $5 bill. It had been pressed flat inside a clear protective sleeve. He held it between us with the same care someone might give a priceless family treasure. "Because your daughter hired me," he said quietly. I looked at the little bill, then at Lily, who smiled as if everything suddenly made perfect sense. Vincent continued in the same calm voice. "She offered me everything she owned because she believed her mother was worth saving. I have negotiated contracts worth billions of dollars, but I have never received a payment that meant more than this." My voice failed me completely. I covered my mouth as tears blurred the room around me. Lily walked over, wrapped one arm around my waist, then looked up at Vincent with complete innocence. "Does this mean you are our friend now?" Vincent smiled, and for the first time it reached all the way into his eyes. "If you will have me," he answered. 5 years passed more quickly than I ever imagined they could. The little brick house never stopped feeling like a miracle, even after thousands of ordinary mornings filled its rooms with laughter, homework, birthday cakes, and quiet family dinners. I still worked at the clinic, although now I supervised an entire pediatric department funded by a charitable foundation that never asked for recognition. Lily grew taller every year, filling the walls with school photographs and colorful drawings that slowly replaced the empty spaces where fear had once lived. Life was still imperfect. There were difficult days, unexpected bills, and moments of uncertainty. But there was something we had never lost again. Hope. Vincent Romano remained part of our lives in the quiet way he preferred. He never tried to become the center of our story. Sometimes weeks passed without seeing him. Then he would appear unexpectedly at one of Lily's school performances, sitting quietly in the last row where few people noticed him. He attended charity events without cameras, donated to hospitals without plaques bearing his name, and somehow always remembered Lily's birthday before anyone else. To the world, he remained an untouchable billionaire whose influence reached every corner of the city. To Lily, he was simply Uncle Vincent. One autumn afternoon, Lily and I visited his office for lunch after she insisted on delivering homemade chocolate chip cookies she had baked herself. The building rose high above Manhattan, its glass walls reflecting the afternoon sun across the skyline. Executives greeted Vincent with unquestioned respect as we walked through polished hallways, yet he smiled most warmly when Lily proudly carried her cookie tin into his office. While she explored the enormous bookshelves, I noticed something displayed inside a simple wooden frame on the wall behind his desk. It was not an award. It was not a photograph with famous people. It was the wrinkled $5 bill, carefully preserved beneath glass. A visiting business partner noticed it at almost the same moment. He smiled politely, assuming it was some private joke. "I have seen paintings worth millions of dollars in offices like this," he said. "Why display $5? Vincent looked at the frame before answering. His voice remained calm, but I recognized the warmth behind every word. "Because it reminds me what wealth is actually for." The room fell quiet. Lily walked over and slipped her hand into his. "That was my money," she announced proudly. The businessman laughed gently. "Then you must be a very generous young lady." Lily smiled the same fearless smile she had worn years earlier at a rainy Manhattan intersection. "I was not generous," she replied. "I was trying to save my mommy." No one spoke for several seconds. Some moments are simply too honest to interrupt. As we prepared to leave, Vincent walked us to the lobby. Before stepping outside, Lily hugged him tightly. "Thank you for listening that day," she whispered. Vincent rested one hand gently on her shoulder. "Thank you for asking." As we walked toward our car, I glanced back one last time. He was still standing in the doorway watching us leave, not with the pride of someone who had rescued another family, but with the quiet gratitude of a man whose own heart had been rescued without ever expecting it. Looking back now, I finally understand something I could not see during those difficult years. Sometimes the greatest miracles do not begin with power, influence, or extraordinary wealth. Sometimes they begin with the trembling hands of a little girl holding out her last $5 because love convinced her that even impossible things were worth believing in. And perhaps that is the greatest fortune anyone could ever receive.